Hi, it's me again, and today we'll be looking at Module 4, which is social conflict and safety in urban areas. It is the expectation that at the end of today, I will be able to understand the types of urban social conflict, understand the impact or effects of social conflicts in urban spaces, understand different city areas and their conflict propensity, that is the relationship between the area of the city and likelihood of conflict. We'll also appreciate risk factors or the things that make the urban area very highly susceptible to conflict. And finally, we'll understand the linkage between social conflict and urban safety. Now, the introduction. Urban areas or cities are usually associated with different forms of conflict or violence, if you like. And this can be related to the heterogeneous nature of the city, the nature of policing, as well as structural factors, things like poverty, social inequality, as well as the context or struggle by urban dwellers over economic and political resources. So this conflicts usually impact on urban safety and peace. In the sense that conflict implies lack of safety or the flight of peace. As a result, enthroning safety in urban spaces necessarily demands a thorough understanding of conflict and tackling conflict and its various manifestations. Types of urban conflict or violence. 1. Riots and protests. Of course, we know that this can be caused by a lot of issues in urban spaces. It might be questions of city maladministration, governance issues. It can also result from personal incidents or things involving individuals. The second one is crime of scarcity and opportunity. Scarcity in terms of poverty, deprivation, and want, and opportunity in terms of scenarios or situations which are tempting. A good example of crime of opportunity is pickpocketing, especially when people see opportunities or situations that lure them into it. We also have professional crimes, which is the third one. Professional crimes are usually undertaken by those we can call professional criminals. These are people who have made crime a way of life. And of course, because it is professional crime, it involves some elements of violence. It can also involve some use of cunning and of course the use of arms. Good examples will include armed robbery, kidnapping, abduction, and advanced fee fraud, among others. The fourth one is terrorism and acts of terror. The motive of this kind of crime is to cause fear, to create fear and psychological tension among urban dwellers. Terrorist acts usually have what you can call a high human carnage, and they are usually motivated by political or ideological reasons. The fifth one is racism and of course governance issues. Racism is usually a case where there are people from different racial backgrounds in the same urban center. And it is actually worsened when the style of governance does not provide for some systematic or structural ways of addressing racial tension and inequality. Then city areas and conflict propensity. In this section, we are looking at the relationship between different areas of the city and the likelihood of conflict. The first one is the city center. The city center is like the hyperactive part of the city. It is also known as the Central Business District. It is a place that is usually well built up, and it is characterized by traffic congestion. There is high police presence and other forms of security because it has a very high commercial and economic value. Conflict, of course, can also be high here because there is what you can call acute heterogeneity and diversity of interest among the different people who are gathered in such a space. The second city area is what is called the inner city areas. The inner city areas are like the areas immediately outside the central business district. In most urban areas, the inner city areas were the areas of first development, and they became neglected as activities moved into the central business districts. So they are usually very close to the central business district, and this can promote opportunistic crimes, and conflict can also be very rife. Sometimes this area is called a twilight zone, because of its proximity to the CBD. Even though it is not very close to the slum or ghettos, it can be close in terms of socioeconomic situation, for instance, poverty and neglect. The third city area is the slum area. Slums are usually characterized by low socioeconomic status of residents. It is also a poorly planned area of the city with low presence of government and its agencies, including the police. As a result of this, conflict and crime occur, both because of the poverty and deprivation in the area, and of course, the lack of presence of government and almost no policing. In most slums, it is difficult to pinpoint things that will give you visible representation of government or governance. Then the city periphery, like the name implies, this is the area that is typically outside the main city zone. Like you can say it is the frontiers of the geographical space of the city. Most times, the city peripheries are usually affected by what is called urban conurbation or growth, which means urban areas quickly grow into this either called peripheries. Because they are peripheries, they are usually less dense in population, which means they have a low population density. They are also spatially spacious, and they might witness what we call low violence and conflict because of these issues. Then finally, we have what is called the red light zone. Most urban cities in the world have their own red light zones. Red light zones are like the centers of attraction in terms of entertainment. They are usually known for high crime rate, of course, and prostitution. These red light zones are usually active and boisterous in the night and wee hours of the morning. They are the locations of garish bars, clubs, cafes, and other entertainment businesses that cater for the mainly transient population, which means this population, members of the population usually come in from outside the zone or outside the town entirely and do their business in the night and wee hours of the morning. Now, conflicts that occur here are usually what you can call low-scale conflicts, since most of those who come here do not actually live here. So, however, there are cases of low crime, like pickpocketing, grab and run, or snatch and run. These are very common in red light zones. Now, what are the risk factors of urban conflict? Which means, what are the things that predispose the urban center to conflict? Number one is population density, which simply means the number of people occupying a given square kilometer of an urban area. Associated with this is what is called sociocultural heterogeneity of residents, which simply underlines the fact that people come from different sociocultural backgrounds into this urban area. So they come with their own different worldviews and values and beliefs. And these differences can easily generate conflict. The second factor is poverty, deprivation, and of course inequality or injustice. The lack of the wherewithal, the social and economic wherewithal among residents can easily create a melting point of conflict. The third one is unemployment. This is especially when it is very high and among young people. Conflict can also result from what you can call city maladministration or misgovernance. which means those who are in charge of administering the city or urban planners have failed to do due diligence in terms of their work, and they have failed to respond to the needs of the urban population. The fifth one is income disparity or income gap, between different social groups. This is especially very dangerous when there is low social provisioning and lack of structural actions on the part of the government to address the gap between those who have and those who do not have. Then, what is the impact or what are the effects of urban conflicts? The first one is emotional effects or psychological well-being. Urban conflict can produce fear, anxiety, tension, and air of danger, and even anticipatory hazard, which affects people's psychological and physical well-being. The second one is conflict or violence can bring physical harm or injury, and this can range in degrees from minor scratches, broken limbs, loss of limbs, and even death in some cases. The third one is the destruction of public facilities or infrastructure. Public buildings can be bombed or destroyed as a result of violence. And in some cases, this also affects personal property. The fourth one is what can be called severe psychological or mental disorder, which might result from conflict. A good example of this would be the PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, global trends in urban social conflict. What this tends to underline is the fact that there is a big difference in terms of urban social conflict between the global south and the global north. Now, the point is, there is more urbanization in the global north than the global south. However, there is more urban conflict in the global south than in the global north. And this can be explained by a lot of things. But principally, we are going to look at one, disparity in socioeconomic situations, in terms of the well-being of people in these two different global zones. The second fact is the nature and responsiveness of city governments or administrations. Typically, city administrations in the global north are much more alive to the demands of their citizens than in the south. Then the third one is the level and sophistication of policing and security resources. This will have to do with the extent to which the police force is well trained, the responsiveness of the police force and other security agents, as well as the resources and amenities at their disposal. The fourth one is there is what can be called a very high rate of unplanned urban development and growth in most parts of the global south. For instance, Mumbai in Italy and India, Cape Town in South Africa, Lagos, Nigeria, Mexico, Nairobi, Kenya, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and others. These are areas where you have very intense urbanization without adequate planning. Then the fifth one is development and structural inequality between the two zones. I think this is more like self-explanatory in terms of the differences in outcomes for citizens. So at this point, we now look at what can be called the summary of this model, which is like an overview of what we have discussed so far. The first place is that urban spaces are usually associated with different forms of violence or conflict, and this might result mainly from the heterogeneous nature of the city and nature of policing, as well as structural issues of poverty, deprivation, economic want, and what have you. The second point is that there are different types of urban conflicts, and some of these include riots and protests, crimes, whether opportunistic or professional, terrorism, racism, and others. 3, some areas of the city, for instance, the slums, city peripheries, and the red light zone, have a very high conflict or crime propensity than the others. And 4, factors in urban conflict or things that expose the urban area to conflict include population density, which we already explained, poverty or deprivation, high unemployment, especially among young people, maladministration, which is the level of or nature of governance, then income disparity between different social groups in the same urban area. Number 5, urban violence can cause psychological disorders. It can also lead to physical injury. It can also generate destruction of public and private infrastructure or property. And in severe cases, it can lead to death and mental disorder of various forms. Now, this is all we have to discuss in this module. The next stage is to look at the assessment exercise. As usual, you're supposed to tick or circle your choosing option. So I'm going to leave you to look at this and make your choice as appropriate. Thank you for your patience, and I hope you will still join us next week for the next module in this series. Have a nice time.